Robert Louis Stevenson. Treasure Island. Chapter 13. How I Began My Shore Adventure. The island looked completely different when I came on deck the next morning. The wind had stopped completely, but we had moved a long way during the night. Now we were lying still about half a mile to the southeast of the low eastern coast. Gray woods covered a large part of the land. This even color was broken in some places by lines of yellow sand in the lower areas and by many tall pine trees that stood higher than the others, some alone, some in groups. But the general color was the same and looked sad. The hills rose clearly above the trees in sharp points of bare rock. All of them had strange shapes, and the spyglass, which was 300 or 400 feet higher than the others, was also the strangest in shape. It rose steeply on almost every side and then suddenly became flat at the top, like a base for a statue. The Hispaniola was rolling heavily in the sea. The booms were pulling hard against the ropes. The rudder was hitting from side to side, and the whole ship was creaking, groaning, and jumping like a factory machine. I had to hold tightly to the rope, and everything seemed to spin in front of my eyes. I was a good sailor when the ship was moving, but this standing still and being rolled around like a bottle was something I could never handle without feeling sick, especially in the morning on an empty stomach. Maybe it was this, or maybe it was the look of the island, with its gray, sad woods and wild rocky peaks, and the waves that we could see and hear crashing loudly on the steep shore. At least, even though the sun was shining bright and hot, and the shorebirds were flying and crying all around us, and you would think anyone would be happy to reach land after such a long time at sea, I felt very unhappy. As people say, my heart sank deeply, and from the first moment I hated even the thought of Treasure Island. We had a long and unpleasant morning of work ahead of us, because there was no wind. The boats had to be put into the water and filled with men, and the ship had to be pulled 3 or 4 miles around the island and through a narrow passage to the safe place behind Skeleton Island. I volunteered to go in one of the boats, even though I had no reason to be there. The heat was very strong, and the men complained loudly about their work. Anderson was in charge of my boat, and instead of keeping the men under control, he complained as loudly as the worst of them. "Well," he said with a curse, "it will not last forever." I thought this was a very bad sign, because until that day the men had worked quickly and willingly. But the sight of the island had weakened their discipline. All the way in, Long John stood next to the man steering the ship and gave directions. He knew the passage very well, and even though the man checking the depth found more water than the chart showed, John never hesitated. "There is a strong current when the tide goes out," he said, "and this passage has been made deeper in a way, like someone dug it with a spade." We stopped exactly where the anchor was shown on the chart, about 1/3 of a mile from each shore, with the mainland on one side and Skeleton Island on the other. The bottom was clean sand. When the anchor dropped, it sent up clouds of birds that flew and cried over the woods, but in less than a minute they settled again, and everything became quiet. The place was completely surrounded by land and covered with trees. The trees came right down to the water. The shores were mostly flat, and the hills stood around in the distance like a circle, one here and one there. 2 small rivers, or rather 2 swamps, flowed into this place, like into a pond. The plants around that part of the shore had a strange, almost poisonous brightness. From the ship, we could not see the house or the wooden fort because they were hidden among the trees. If we had not had the chart, we might have thought we were the first people to stop there since the island rose from the sea. There was no wind at all, and no sound except the waves crashing far away on the beaches and rocks. A strange, heavy smell hung over the place, a smell of wet leaves and rotting wood. I saw the doctor smelling the air again and again, like someone checking bad food. "I don't know about treasure," he said, "but I am sure there is fever here." If the men's behavior had been worrying in the boat, it became truly dangerous when they came back on board. They lay around the deck, talking and complaining together. Even the smallest order was answered with dark looks and obeyed slowly and without care. Even the honest men seemed affected, because no one tried to improve the situation. It was clear that a mutiny was coming, like a storm in the air. And it was not only we in the cabin who saw the danger. Long John was very busy, moving from group to group and giving advice. No man could have acted better. He tried harder than anyone to be helpful and polite. He smiled at everyone. If an order was given, John was ready at once, moving on his crutch and saying the most cheerful, "Aye, aye, sir," in the world. And when there was nothing to do, he kept singing one song after another, as if he wanted to hide the bad mood of the others. Of all the dark things about that dark afternoon, this clear worry shown by Long John seemed the worst. We had a meeting in the cabin. "Sir," said the captain, "if I give one more order, the whole crew will turn against us at once. You see, sir, this is the problem. I give an order, and I get a rude answer. If I answer back, there will be fighting immediately. If I say nothing, Silver will notice that something is wrong, and we are lost. Now, we have only one man we can trust." "And who is that?" asked the squire. "Silver, sir," said the captain. "He is just as eager as you and I to keep things calm. This is only a quarrel. He could talk them out of it if he had the chance. So what I suggest is to give him that chance. Let us allow the men to go ashore for the afternoon. If they all go, then we take control of the ship. If none of them go, then we stay in the cabin and defend ourselves. If some go, then remember my word, sir. Silver will bring them back as calm as lambs." This plan was accepted. Loaded pistols were given to all the trusted men. Hunter, Joyce, and Redruth were told the truth, and they received the news with less surprise and more courage than we expected. Then the captain went on deck and spoke to the crew. "My lads," said he, "we have had a hot day, and we are all tired and not feeling well. A trip ashore will not hurt anyone. The boats are still in the water. You can take them, and anyone who wants can go ashore for the afternoon. I will fire a gun half an hour before sunset." I think the foolish men believed they would find treasure immediately when they landed, because they quickly stopped complaining and gave a loud cheer. The sound echoed from a distant hill and made the birds fly up again, crying loudly around the anchorage. The captain was too clever to stay where he could be seen. He disappeared at once, leaving Silver to organize the group, and I think this was a good idea. If he had stayed on deck, he could not have pretended that he did not understand the situation. It was completely clear. Silver was the real captain, and he had a very rebellious crew. The honest men, and I soon saw that there were some, must have been very foolish. Or rather, the truth was that all the men were affected by the example of the leaders, some more and some less. A few of them, who were basically good men, could not be pushed any further. It is one thing to be lazy and avoid work, and quite another to take a ship and kill a group of innocent men. At last, however, the group was ready. 6 men were to stay on the ship, and the other 13, including Silver, began to get into the boats. Then I suddenly had the first of the wild ideas that helped save our lives. If Silver left 6 men on the ship, it was clear that our group could not take and control it. And since only 6 men stayed, it was also clear that the people in the cabin did not need my help at that moment. I quickly decided to go ashore. In a moment, I slipped over the side and hid in the front part of the nearest boat. Almost at the same time, the boat pushed away. No one noticed me, except the man at the front who said, "Is that you, Jim? Keep your head down." But Silver, from the other boat, looked carefully over and called out to ask if it was me. From that moment, I began to regret what I had done. The crews raced toward the beach, but the boat I was in had a small advantage. It was lighter and had better rowers, so it moved ahead quickly. The front of the boat hit the trees near the shore, and I grabbed a branch, pulled myself out, and jumped into the nearest bushes, while Silver and the others were still about 100 yards behind. "Jim! Jim!" I heard him shouting, but I did not listen. I jumped, bent low, and pushed through the bushes, running straight ahead until I could run no more.